Hey kiddos, today we are reviewing a passage called Lewis and Clark and the Great Falls Portage. Um, Listen, kiddos, one thing that I'm noticing is a lot of times we're given extra information about the passage, background knowledge basically, to help us make inferences and understand what's going on. Background knowledge is so important. So, anytime you see that kind of stuff under the title, please read it, okay? It's going to give you so much insight into what we need to know or what's going on. So this says the Corps of Discovery was a group of military volunteers led by Captain Meriwether Lewis and Lieutenant William Clark. This group of men and one woman explored the northwestern region of the United States. So we know they're explorers. We know who they were. They were led by Lewis and Clark, and they were exploring the northwestern region of the U.S. Okay, just giving us background knowledge about who these men are and what they're doing before we start reading. Okay, all right. So let's think about our strategy. C, clearly read the question. U, underline key words. B, be sure you understand what the question is asking. E, eliminate. It took me a second. I'm like, what letter am I on? E, eliminate wrong choices and find evidence for the best. And S, select the best choice. So we're going to apply that today as we go through. So our question says, clearly read, what is the main purpose of the passage? Okay, we've been talking about this keyword main purpose a lot. When it says main purpose, it means why did the author write it? What did the author want me to learn from this passage? Okay, what is its purpose? So again, we think about PI, persuade, inform, explain, entertain. And even though you don't see those verbs here to persuade, inform, all of those things, we can still kind of get the idea that it's like, okay, is he trying to talk me into something, trying to give me information, trying to tell me a story, or trying to explain how to do something? And if we can narrow it down, we're going to do a better job of being able to figure out our descriptions. So this says to compare and contrast the land along the river and left forks of the Missouri River. Okay, well, I mean, it does talk about how they had to take a fork, right? And that if they took the correct one, they were going to see the waterfalls, but it never tells us what the other fork was going to be about. And so that is not going to be our best choice. We're going to eliminate that answer. To describe the challenges of the Corps as they carried their goods around waterfalls. Well, yeah, it definitely did. It talked about the cactuses wearing through their moccasins, how long it was going to be leaving their things behind, how heavy all that stuff was. So I definitely think that could be a possibility. C, to identify key landmarks that the Corps saw on their way to the Great Falls of the Missouri. Okay, it did talk about landmarks, but you have to think about what else this author told us about. It told us so much about the portage, the carrying. Think about the title, guys, portage. In the passage, it told us portage is the carrying of goods. So there's probably, the purpose of this is probably to tell us about carrying the goods. So I don't think that C is going to be the best choice. This is to give information about the personalities of Lewis and Clark. Well, I mean, it talked that they were excited, but I don't feel like I could tell you the difference in them. I don't feel like I could tell you who was funny or who liked to read or who was nerdy or who was athletic. Okay, I don't get any of that. But I do see this one right here, B. Okay? All right, let's look at this one. According to the passage, which event happened last? Okay. Y'all, only 30% of us got this question right. That hurts my heart. I'm going to tell you why. Because A says according to the passage, which tells me it's in the passage. And this is a sequencing question. Look what it says. Last. What happened last? Okay? We should know this. You go find these events and just see which one happened last. Okay? Oh, all right. So it says A, the Corps built new boats. B, the Corps attached sails to makeshift wagons. C, the Corps hid boats and equipment near the base of the waterfall. Or D, the Corps reached the Great Falls of Missouri. I know this is hard. Just go find them in the passage. Okay, just go find it in the passage. So I'm gonna go show it to you. Okay, all right. So up here, all right. So it gave me 4 events. Okay, it gave me building new boats, attaching sails to the boats, hiding the boats, or reach the Great Falls. All right. So let's look here, guys. Listen. Well, the first thing they did was reach the falls. So that eliminates D. Okay, because that's what they did first. Okay. If I keep reading right down around here, it talks about attaching the sails. Okay. Oh, right here it talks about hiding their boats. Okay. And then down here it talks about building new boats to replace the ones they'd left behind. Okay, so look at them. I got my 4 events. Reaching the falls, hiding the boats, attaching the sails, building new boats. A said build new boats. That's what happened last. It's right here. Guys, this is a hard question simply because it takes time. And one of the things that I'm noticing is we're not slowing down and taking the time that we're supposed to be taking. Slow down, take your time. This is a I can get this right for sure. There's no inference here to be made. It's simply going in the passage and sequencing. We know how to do this. Slow down, take your time. Okay? And so that is why the answer here is A. I was like making sure I had it right. Yep, they built new boats. That's the last thing that they did. All right, let's look here. Which choice best summarizes the highlighted paragraph? Okay, when we summarize, we basically just want to pick a sentence that tells about it. Oh, I just realized how cut off that is. Hang on just a second. Let me pull up the full one, and I will fix that by the time you guys have to take this. But for my video purposes, I need to make sure that I have that correct. I think it's always a good idea to check your work first. Which one's lower? Lewis and Clark. 10. Here we go. All right. Says, which choice best summarizes the highlighted paragraph? All right, so look at my paragraph. So what I need to do here is I need to read this paragraph before I look for the choice. Lewis was thrilled to see the enormous waterfall, the Great Falls of the Missouri. It was 900 feet wide and 800 feet high with a beautiful rainbow just above the spray. Lewis called it the grandest sight he ever beheld. More importantly, it meant that he and Clark had chosen the right fork in the Missouri River. All winter long, they had been talking with Native Americans about a water route across the West. The Native Americans had described the territory in detail, including important landmarks like the waterfall in front of Lewis. All right, so we're just picking one that sums up. In one sentence, tells me basically what was this about. It's almost like main idea. What was this paragraph all about? Okay. Was it A, when Lewis saw the Great Falls, he was disappointed because it was an obstacle he had not expected? Okay. In this paragraph right here, it never talks about it being an obstacle. Sure, later in the passage, it definitely does talk about it being an obstacle. Guys, that is why it is so important when it tells you about a highlighted paragraph, reread that paragraph because it's going to trick you. This could be a trick question because it does talk about how it's an obstacle, okay, but not in this paragraph. So, no. When Lewis saw the Great Falls, he was happy because he knew they were going the right way. Oh, yeah, he definitely does say that. It says all winter long, they've been talking to Native Americans. They were looking for the landmarks described like what Lewis saw here. So we're thinking maybe on this one, right? But remember our strategy, we want to select the best choice, which means that we have to eliminate all the wrong ones. When Lewis saw the Great Falls, he was relieved because it was the last of the 5 waterfalls he needed to cross. No, we know that he had to cross 5 waterfalls. But again, we don't learn about that until later in the passage. We are only focused right here on this paragraph, and that is why it is important to go back and reread it, so it is not C. D, when Lewis saw the Great Falls, he was curious because he wanted to better understand why, hang on, I gotta get my clicker, why rainbows happened. I mean, he saw a rainbow. He said it was a great sight, but did he ever talk about being curious and wanting to know how rainbows were made? No, okay? So my best choice here is B. Okay, is B. All right, let's go back and look at our next one. All right. Based on the information, oh, here we go. We're looking at a highlighted paragraph again. Y'all have got to be rereading those. Based on the information in the highlighted paragraph, which conclusion did the Corps reach about the Great Falls of Missouri? Okay, let's reread our paragraph. We know it's based on the information, which means there's going to be good clues. What conclusion did they draw? This means what inference could they make? What conclusion did they make at the end of their time there? Now it was time for the portage, the carrying of goods over an obstacle. Lewis and Clark's expedition party needed to carry their canoes and supplies around the waterfalls. Before they saw the Great Falls, Lewis and Clark thought the portage would be less than a mile. As Lewis scouted further, he found 4 more waterfalls and realized the portage would be much longer. Okay, so what conclusion can they draw about the Great Falls? It was smaller than he expected. Oh no, it was much bigger, right? He said he thought it was only going to be a mile, but he says, oop, it's going to be much longer. It meant they had taken the wrong fork. No, this is what he said he was looking for, right? It just means it's going to be longer than what they had. It could be used as a source of water for the rest of the journey. Never says that, but it does say this right here. It would be harder to get around the waterfall than they had first thought, because not only do they have to cross 1, they have to cross 4 more, which is 5. Okay? All right, let's look at the next one. Look at how many highlighted paragraphs are in this one. Why did the author most likely include a detail about boat sales in the highlighted paragraph? Okay, so we're hearing why. This means purpose. I'm just going to put a P there. Why did the author include the detail about the sales? What was his purpose behind it? What did he want us to know? Okay, so let's look at our highlighted paragraph. The Corps would have to hike 18 miles to get around the 5 waterfalls. They left their heaviest boats and equipment hidden near the base of the falls. The other canoes and supplies were carried, dragged, and pushed. The Corps created makeshift wagons. When the wind was strong, they attached the boat sails to help move the equipment. So why do you think he tells us about the sails? Okay. To give an example of one of the supplies the Corps ran out of. Did they run out of the sail? No, they used the sails. To show one way the Corps tried to make moving their equipment less difficult. That means make it easier. What does it say right here? To help move, to make it easier, to make it less difficult. B is a very good option. To help explain one of the steps the Corps took to make a new boat. No, they just were attaching sails to equipment. Didn't even have to be boats to help move it. To give a reason why the Corps needed to continue their journey. Our best choice here is B. All right, based on the passage, here we go. Keyword. Which statement about the weather during the portage is true? Y'all. This is a word for word answer. Y'all got to go find these, okay? It was cold, sometimes it would snow. B, it was cold, but the sun was almost always out. C, it was windy, but never rained. Or D, it was hot, and sometimes it would storm. So based on the passage, which statement about the weather is true? So when I go back up and look at my passage here, okay, it said that, here we go. The intense heat of the summer sun was interrupted by violent storms with thunder, rain, and hailstones the size of eggs. They had swarms of gnats and mosquitoes, rattlesnakes and grizzly bears. Okay, so what does it tell us about the weather? Where was I at? Here we go. It was cold, but sometimes would snow. Nope, said intense heat. It was cold, but the sun was always out. Nope, said intense heat. It was windy, but never rained. Nope. It was hot, but sometimes would storm. Y'all, that is a right there question. Okay? All right. This is our last one. Very good. Why did the author, we got a lot of purpose questions in this one, kiddos. It's about going back, rereading that highlighted section and making sure that you're, being very diligent and thinking through the skills we've learned. Because y'all, we learned all of these skills. We know how to do this stuff. We just got to slow down, take our time. Okay? Why did the author most likely include the highlighted sentence in the passage? So let's look at the sentence before we look at the options. The Corps wore through their moccasins every 2 days. Remember, they're traveling with a group of Native Americans. Moccasins were a shoe that Native Americans would make out of leather. And so if they're wearing through them, it means they're tearing holes in them. They're not holding up very long. Remember, I talked about having to walk through the cactuses. So you think about the needles on the cactuses. They're probably tearing at the shoes. Okay, so why do you think the author tells us that? Why do you think he wants us to know that their shoes kept falling apart? Okay, it says to provide a historical detail about how people dressed in the early 1800s, to give an example of a good that Lewis and Clark traded for food. They never talks about trading. To emphasize the difficulty and discomfort of the journey. This word emphasize here means to make a big point of, to be like, listen, really pay attention. This is a big deal. Okay. So when he's talking about, this whole paragraph talks about all the hard things they had to go through. And when he talks about wearing through their moccasins, it's just that other level of their shoes are literally falling apart. Okay. This one says explain why they have to hide their goods. No. Okay. But our best choice here is C. Kiddos, we actually did really well on this one. And I know that I hammer you hard. And I know in the video I'm like, do this. But it's because we've worked so hard this year. And I'm so excited for you guys to have the opportunity to show off what you know. And so just slow down, take your time, and use these strategies that we're talking about to help you make the best choice in your reading. Please let me know if you have any questions, you don't understand why an answer is what it is, or you struggled with something, or there's a specific skill that you're realizing, man, every time it asks me a question like this, I'm getting it wrong. Please let me know, and I am here to help you, okay? Thanks so much for working hard for me, kiddos.